Right, Butterfree. Um, Again, I feel like everybody's had a Butterfree. Have you had a Butterfree?
Yeah. Yeah, they're I think Butterfree is a really, really good early game Pokemon to have. Like the Caterpie is easy to catch and evolve. You learn a lot about how Pokemon evolution works because it happens very quickly. And so you understand from evolving your Caterpie into a Butterfree what to expect from the rest of your Pokemon adventure, from the rest of your Pokemon team building. I think Butterfree is quite a well-rounded Pokemon. Like, obviously it only starts off with like tackle and string shot and harden, but as soon as it evolves, it immediately gets gust. So, I mean, at this point, you've probably got like a Pidgey or a Spear or maybe even both on your team, so you don't really need another flying type move.
Mm.
But like, if you want a flying type that has a bit more versatility to it than a Spearow or a Pidgey, like a Butterfree is a fair shout,
Mm.
especially at this early stage of the game where you don't have options necessarily for flying types that have a lot else going on. Um, I like, it can learn all the status moves and you can build a really solid team around some of those status
Mm.
moves. And again, I think it learns some quite powerful moves for the stage of the game you're likely to get it. Like it can learn confusion and it can learn side beam a bit later on, I think. And then it has, some more bug type moves and some more flying type moves. And I think those that kind of move pool is quite rare at the stage of the game where you typically get a Butterfree. Like you can have a Butterfree before you're out of
Mm.
Viridian Forest, and then you've got moves that otherwise you would have to wait quite late in the game to get a Pokemon that can learn them. So I think if you know how to use your Butterfree, it could be a really solid addition. Like I probably wouldn't keep it as far as the Elite Four, but it's a solid addition to the start of the game for sure.
Mm.
It can be really valuable and it can also like teach you a lot about thinking strategically about what moves you use and how.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially when you're a kid, especially in the early bit of the game, it's easy to fall into the trap of the most powerful damage dealing moves. If they got stabbed, great, and that's it.
Yeah.
But because Butterfree has quite, again, a varied, diverse move pool, of lots of different types and lots of different um styles of battle. It it is one of those early game Pokemon that triggers you to think a bit more about how you're going to use Pokemon within a team
Mm.
and how you're going to use Pokemon in different ways.
Yeah.
So I think, oh yeah, Butterfree, good Pokemon to have.
Mm.
I say that like I don't dump every Butterfree I ever get straight into PC, but if I was playing like Red and Blue for the first time again, if like it wiped my memory and I was playing it again for the first time, like I might try harder to keep a Butterfree. I might get a bit more creative with it.
Mm.
Or
Yeah.
maybe I'll like replay Let's Go Eevee with a Butterfree or something.
I think that yeah, as you kind of revisit the games um, and you get an idea of that you don't necessarily all just want just attacking moves on your Pokemon. Um,
Yeah.
I think yeah, it is good to be able to kind of see what else is about. Like I personally most playthroughs I'll have a Pokemon that can put a Pokemon to sleep.
Yeah.
Because I like it for trying to get what's it called? Try to like capture legendaries like later on or things that are like a little
Hmm.
bit more difficult to capture. I also like poison type moves. Like poison's like one of my favorite types. Again, one of the reasons why I've got Gloom as one of our like semi mascots is that I do really like poison type. So the fact it can get poison powder and sleep powder. I'm not as keen on paralysis. I find,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like how the kind of hit and miss kind of element of it, and I'm not that bothered. I don't know about you about like that. Like I've got to have my move go first.
Yeah, I agree. I think um I think paralysis can be kind of a naff one. I don't it's one of those ones that is probably just my biased memory. But it's like when my Pokemon are paralyzed, they just don't do shit for 5 turns.
Mm.
When the opponent's Pokemon are paralyzed, they manage to like power through and do it anyway, and it's
Yeah.
like the game is rigged.
Um, I mean, it's like I remember back when I was a kid. I used to. I'm just looking now about whether or not it can learn. I think can it learn Confuse Ray, or Confusion?
Yeah, it learns confusion pretty early on, and then later on, Psybeam or its psychic type move that it learns by leveling up. And I think like it learns some pretty good moves by leveling up, but I think it's best like obviously like it stops learning moves quite early on, which again is fair because it's from a line of Pokemon that grow early and evolve early.
Mm,
So yeah, it gets confusion pretty early, then it gets like the powders. Then at level 16 it gets Psybeam, which is like quite a young level for a relatively powerful move. Um, and the last move it learns from leveling up is at level 44. So that's a really low level to be like done learning.
mm,
But it can get some really, really top tier moves um by TM.
yeah.
So I think that is really interesting. And I think the issue with Butterfree is that if you're not using TMs, it its more powerful moves are like don't have stab.
Yeah.
It only learns gust, air slash, and tailwind that are flying type. And it's like they're not amazing. And well, you know, Whirlwind's normal type. Why is Whirlwind normal type? Gust, air slash, and tailwind are flying type moves. And like that's not a lot of for its like secondary typing.
Mm,
Um, but I think yeah, it is one of those Pokemon that you have to be prepared to yeah use TMs on. Otherwise, you're not gonna have the best options because it can learn some cool moves,
yeah.
uh, especially if you can get those solid TMs to give it a bit of a boost.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was a kid, the thing that used to wind me up the most was, and I'm about to say this, and you might be like, no, you've misremembered that. Um, I remember confusion, like really, like winding me up as a child. Like you saying that about, like when your Pokemon's paralyzed, it won't be able to move for 5 turns versus theirs, which it'll be like, oh, it just struggles through. Oh well done you, right? But like I seem to recall that when the Pokemon was confused as a kid, if it hurt itself in its confusion, I seem to recall being so wound up that I would be like squeezing my Game Boy so hard that potentially it could have broke like it used to like when I was a kid I was I'm quite chilled out now, but like as a kid I used to like throw my controllers at the wall and stuff like that. And
Oh my God.
yeah, I remember, right, I bought myself a new PS2 controller, and within like a couple of days I'd like broke it. I was so wound up, right? And I seem to recall like my Pokemon being confused like used to really wind me up. um and so for it to have confusion, I think is probably actually quite a useful thing to have, even though I feel like for me, whenever I probably got rid of it because I felt like their Pokemon never got never hurt themselves in its confusion, but mine always did.
Yeah, yeah, that is entirely relatable. Um, and also, and especially because I feel like that was a an issue that really wound me up when you were fighting Zubats,
Yeah.
and I always felt like when I was fighting a Zubat, it was torture, and those Zubats were just so irritating. When I tried to use a Zubat, my Zubat just didn't do shit. And I'm like, then I learned how to use a Zubat, and that's how I ended up with
Mm.
this little buddy.
Oh,
But
did you know that it recently topped a fan poll for favorite Pokemon Crobat?
ah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Mm. So you are not alone. Um, but yeah, I do. I remember, right, because I was an only child, so I used to speak to myself a lot. Right.
Hmm.
I seem to recall, like, if my Pokemon got hit and it had, if it was like Crobat has hit your Gloom, the attack was super effective. I seem to recall saying a lot as a child to the Game Boy, well, of course it was super effective. Of course it was. Like, why wouldn't it be? Right.
Oh, I love that. I love the mental image of like sassy little Tom getting annoyed at his
Oh,
own Game Boy.
well, I've got a potentially more pathetic one, which was I remember going, um, again, like I'd get so angry if my Pokemon got confused. It hurt itself in its confusion, and I remember as a child, if when it would pop up, your Pokemon hurt itself in its confusion, I would as a child go, it hurt itself in its confusion, it hurt itself in its confusion, it hurt itself in its confusion.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Oh, you. Aw.
uh,
Oh.
right. Oh, I'll tell you something that I think is also worth pointing out about. So, I mean, we mentioned it a little bit in the break, right? I think that Beedrill is sometimes considered like the cooler of the two, and I think because it's got all the stabbing needles, and it is a bee, and it's a bit more aggressive and stuff like that. So I was actually surprised that they gave Butterfree a Gigantamax form.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not surprised they gave Butterfree a Gigantamax form because, like, Butterfree being on Ash's team meant that it kind of there's more of a nostalgia element to it. I feel like it's Ash's team Pokemon that gets it. Like Beedrill's pretty prevalent in the
Mm.
show. You see some like very powerful Beedrill in like other people's teams and in the wild, obviously, and it's like a core feature of the Metapod episode, and then it's just a lingering threat
Mm.
every time they're in a forest.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there is definitely more of a story with Butterfree, more of a character with Butterfree. Like Butterfree and Ash go on a big long journey together. Like Butterfree, battles Misty's Staryu
Mm.
and is sick at it. Butterfree is in like a number of like key episodes. Like it's one of Ash's original team, and it's in uh there's the episode where like he is showing off how powerful and brilliant his Butterfree is, and like someone else wants it and offers to trade it for his Raticate, and like Ash desperately regrets it because he misses his Butterfree and like insists on trading back.
Mm.
Which I think was quite an emotional episode to the point that like I didn't want to trade my Pokemon in game because I saw that episode thinking, oh, is my Pokemon going to be upset the same way that Ash's Butterfree is? Um, and I think it does kind of undermine the idea that you are supposed to trade Pokemon a little bit that episode, but like, oh well,
Mm.
I don't care that much. It's cute. And I think again, it leans into that whole idea that like Ash's priority, as well as being good at battling and good at strategizing and all this other stuff that he wants, his priority is having those positive, fulfilling relationships with his team. And I think that's very cute.
Yes.
And then obviously you've got the, you know, the first Pokemon episode that makes you cry. Uh, which to be fair, I don't think should have been called Bye Bye Butterfree. I think it definitely gives the finale away
Yeah.
um in the title. But I think it's very sweet, like the way everyone has Butterfree's back when it falls for that pink Butterfree.
Mm,
I think you see their like mating ritual dance, which is like again a nice glimpse into like what they're like in the wild
mm,
and how these Pokemon exist outside of having trainers.
yeah.
And I think that's a nice like interesting glimpse into I guess like the Pokemon world's natural environment.
Yeah.
And then obviously like when Ash finally says goodbye because he knows that that's what Butterfree wants and what it'll be best is for it to be allowed to spread its wings, live
Mm,
its best life, go have a bunch of little caterpies that are going to get eaten by Pidgeys.
yeah. Well,
Um,
well,
yeah, it's sad. It's cute and it's
yeah.
it's bittersweet because you know it's for the best, but you don't want to say goodbye. And
Mm,
it's again one of those what Ash wants is what's best for his Pokemon, even if that means he has to let them go.
mm. Well, um, hopefully there'll be more of these heartbreaking moments. Although I get the feeling that as we move beyond Kanto, there will be less.
Yeah,
Well, something that I
quite
wanted to
possibly.
show was uh, so I spotted this when I looked at Gigantamax Butterfree, which I didn't know was a form, and I'm guessing. So I'm just going to put it on that Gigantamax Butterfree is based on Mothra from
Okay,
from the Godzilla universe.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I do. I think it
Although, like,
looks.
there are moth Pokemon it could have been based on.
Well, that's going to bring me on to my next point, which we referenced very briefly. Well, not very briefly in the Blastoise episode. That there's a theory that that Venomoth and Butterfree were swapped.
Yes, I think there is. I think this has legs. This argument because there are. I mean, like Butterfree and Venonat have the same eyes, whereas Caterpie and Metapod don't have the same sort of visual synergy with Butterfree.
Mm.
Um, and I think like the way that Venomoth is quite angular compared to Butterfree, like
Mm.
Butterfree's sort of round and fat. I think Venomoth's like big round eyes
Yeah,
match Caterpie's eyes a bit more.
yeah,
And then it's sort of like pointier body matches Metapod's pointy body
yeah,
more than uh um Butterfree does. And I feel like I think it definitely looks like there could have been like a last minute switch over.
yeah. Well,
But it's not so incongruous now that I care. I
mm,
think it's more of just like a fun, like behind the scenes possibility.
yeah. Yeah, like it wouldn't surprise me if they went, okay, so this is probably going to be the first fully evolved Pokemon that we get, and
Mm-hmm.
Venomoth, well, what became Venomoth probably isn't quite, might feel like a little bit anticlimactic.
Yeah, I I guess. Um, I feel like it might have been. This is just like a theory in my head. It is not something I have any evidence for. I feel like it could be another um anime related reason. The way that like Pikachu was picked as a starter so that um the kids who chose their starter when Pikachu wasn't an option, uh it wouldn't feel left out if Ash picked a different one. And also I feel like Venomoth is creepier than Butterfree. It looks more like a creepy bug rather than a cute
Mm,
butterfly. And I think knowing they had quite a young target audience for the anime, Caterpie is the easiest Pokemon to catch. Ash's first catch makes sense for it to be Caterpie. And then if that evolves into a creepy bug Pokemon, that might scare some children.
mm,
Just because there are creepy bug Pokemon around, the same way there are creepy ghost Pokemon around, isn't a bad thing. But I think if it's going to be in a lot of episodes, if it's going to be on Ash's main team coming out and battling quite
mm,
frequently, I think it makes more sense for it to be the cute butterfly Pokemon. And it doesn't make as much sense for Ash to be able to catch Venonat very early on in the show.
mm.
And I think like the more I say it out loud, the more it makes sense to me that like that could have influenced the decision.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like looking at like the it's like you can see there the like the original like what could have potentially been the original like evolution line for Caterpie. I think it would have been difficult to do that kind of emotional storytelling with Venomoth as well.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like it's because of this theory partly that I had such a kind of strong image of Butterfree in my head for the drawing, because one of the things that I like put in first and foremost was I was like, I know that Butterfree's got hands, like, and that's like one of the
Yeah.
that's like one of the arguments that they use of like, okay, why
And
does it go from having just feet to nothing to having hands?
yeah. Because and it's also the same shape, hand, eyes, and nose as Venonat.
Yeah.
Like those core features are near identical. But I feel like if they wanted to, like the same way they have like Diglett and Wiglet are completely different Pokemon. They just seem to have developed in the same way, completely separately. This could be one of those fun things where it's just like, oh, people think that like Venonat and Butterfree have a common ancestor somewhere or something like that. Like I think that would
Mm,
be quite a cute sort of like meta
mm,
theory to go over it.
yeah.
Backstory. I think that'd be quite interesting if they pulled something like that in somewhere. I don't know if they will carry on with like additional explanations, additional stories for first generation Pokemon, but like you know, enjoy seeing something that acknowledges the similarities because they've got the same antenna as well.
Yeah.
They've just got the same everything. They look so similar.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, no, I do think the not wanting Venomoth to be on Ash's team idea has legs.
yeah. Well, let's hope that when we eventually get to the Venonat episode, all the Pokedex entries are full of Venonat stinks. It fucking hums.
Venomoth fucking stinks. It's stinky, stinky body.
Right, so should we have a look at the Dex entries?
Let's do that.
Okie doke. So, in battle, it flaps its wings at high speed to release highly toxic dust into the air. Now, that to me, right, it might just be because of what we've just come into this off of. That almost makes it sound like a moth, because like moths have got like dust on their wings and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean it does. I think Butterfree's signature moves are like poison powder, um, stun spore, uh, the sleep powder, all of those ones, the powder type of moves. I think that makes sense. I feel like it could easily have either kept that over from when it was supposed to be a Venomoth, but also like I think all of the kind of moth butterfly Pokemon have this. Like Venomoth has a very similar move set. Um, Dustox and Beautifly have a very similar move set. They all have these kind of like powder based moves that are sort of very similar.
Mm.
And I feel like it is one of those ones that sort of makes sense that they can all do a similar thing. They all have that similar fight style, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's very in line again with like if we're correct about this kind of being an earlier like the bug types being earlier in their kind of concepts, and that would be why they are closer to reality, because it is its genesis was from bug catching in Japan. That it would make sense that these are quite true to life, and probably I mean I don't know about you, but I don't read these in advance, but like it wouldn't surprise me if these feel like quite realistic, at least in our kind of red, yellow, gold, silver entries before they start to kind of become a little bit more. Butterfree's dust can cover an entire Subaru within one flap of its wing.
I feel like, funnily enough, it. So the first handful, red, blue, yellow, and stadium are quite consistent. Like it's got dust on its wings. That it can fly in the rain with its water repellent wings. Be careful not to breathe in its dust. That makes sense, and it also fits in with its battle style.
Yeah. Useful
However,
for any asthmatics like myself.
yeah, from gold onwards, it suddenly gets really obsessed with it collecting honey. Like gold says it collects honey every day. It rubs honey onto the hairs on its legs to carry it back to its nest. Someone please draw me a Butterfree with hairy legs, please. Um, and again, I think that the hairy legs thing kind of matches the Venonat to Butterfree evolution, because Venonat is hairy and Caterpie is not.
Yeah.
So I think that does also support that sort of theory that they were supposed to be connected. Um, Water repellent powder on its wings enables it to collect honey even in heavy rain. It flits from flower to flower collecting honey. It can identify distant flowers in bloom. Like, none of this is about battle or dust or anything. It's all about honey. And I don't really remember in like the games or the show, like Butterfree being particularly um centered around honey anyway, but like all of the Pokedex entries carry on like this. Ruby and Sapphire, Butterfree has a superior ability to search for delicious honey. It can search out, extract, and carry honey home from flowers that are blooming over 6 miles from its nest. Which honestly, given a lot of the other Pokedex entries are like hard as an iron slab, it can melt boulders, like 6 miles feels like a very realistic brag.
I mean, I'm wondering if the professor that wrote these, like, wrote a lot of them at like breakfast time and was like,
yeah,
was like, oh, do you know what I could really do with for my toast? Some honey.
Yeah,
get that Butterfree over there now.
Diamond and Pearl go as far as not just that it does the honey, but it loves the honey of flowers. Can locate flower patches that have even tiny amounts of pollen. Then back to rubbing it on its hairy legs. Who knew Butterfree was into splodging?
Is that a thing? I didn't know. Is that a thing?
Don't Google it while you've got your thing on the stream. It loves honey. Water repellent powder enables it to collect honey. It loves more honey.
Oh.
Wings are protected by rain repellent dust. I feel like that could have been more fun to incorporate into the battle element of Butterfree. Ooh. Have its wings be water resistant and have it like powerful against Misty. Like I know it can learn some grass type moves, but I think its damage dealing ones are TM ones, which you probably wouldn't have by the time you get to Misty. But I guess if you've taught it those by the time you get to is there a water type Elite Four trainer? I don't know. I don't remember for Gen 1 off the top of my head. I think it's Ice type.
Yeah, Ice type, yeah.
Yeah. Which probably wouldn't be as good because Ice is definitely better against Flying type and Bug type. So I like so I feel like if that had been, or even just incorporated into the show a little bit, like when Ash fought Misty and used Butterfree and Staryu hit Butterfree, I feel like I know Butterfree did shake it off pretty well,
Yeah.
and it was like the force of the jet that had more of an impact than the fact that it was water. But I feel like if they'd shown that kind of, if someone had just sort of, if like Brock or someone had been in the background being like, oh, Butterfree actually has like water resistant wings, and like that would have been an interesting way to draw
Mm.
that like fun fact in.
Yeah.
Um, I like so Sun and Moon starts getting fucking way off base. Close examination of its large eyes reveals that each eye is composed of a myriad of tiny eyes. And now I'm horrified. That's horrifying. I hate it. Thank you. Hate it.
Somebody
Uh,
send us an image of Butterfree with its eyes made out of tiny eyes.
yeah.
Uh,
When attacked by other Pokemon, it defends itself by scattering poisonous scales and fluttering its wings. I feel like the Moon Professor was just like, bitch, this ain't dust, it's scales, but otherwise that is the same
yeah.
as all of the toxic dust ones. Um, Ultra Sun, its wings are covered in toxic scales. If it finds bird Pokemon going after Caterpie, Butterfree sprinkles its scales on them to drive them off. I think that's very cute. I
Yeah.
like this one. I like that it shows its relationship to its offspring.
Yeah.
I like that it um shows a bit of like the food chain in the Pokemon world, shows a bit of its relationships to other Pokemon, and how its battle style has kind of like evolved as an evolutionary necessity.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, like both of them, because this here is for the first time since the Stadium Professor, where it almost feels like this is done by like a different person.
Yeah.
Like I like the fact that they feel a tiny bit pedantic. It's like they've gone. Actually, I think you'll find that the powder is its toxic scales. Um, and
Yeah.
and it's like they've gone into like they did this. They had originally done the initial bit of like it finds bird Pokemon going after Caterpie, and these bird Pokemon are like you fucking you stinky bug, and then it sprinkles its scales on them to drive them off, and then it felt like the need to like that would have done for me as an entry, but then it felt the need to be like, actually, I think you'll find that the powder is scales, toxic scales, and I feel like what backs this up is so all of them have been like it rubs honey on its legs, splodging, whatever that is, right? I'm not googling it until we're off stream, but it's also felt the need to go nectar. You don't get honey from flowers. Bees make honey in hives. I think you'll find that the nectar is its favourite food, not the honey. So get on with it. And again, it could have just had in Fields of Flowers. It has heated battles with Cutiefly for territory. That could have been the entry, but it felt the need to be like nectar. Get it right, nectar, and then Professor Oak has gone back to just being carefree in Let's Go Pikachu. It's like covered in poisonous powder. Just be like, don't give a shit that they're scales, mate. Don't give a shit.
I do like the Cutiefly detail because like I enjoy that. Again, it shows more relationships with other Pokemon in the environment in its natural habitat. These ones, Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, feel like someone is observing them in the environment.
Yeah.
Rather than jabbing it until its insides fall out. And I feel like Butterfree is kind of like aggressive. Like it's fighting with bird Pokemon, which I guess that makes sense because it's trying to eat its babies. It's fighting with Cutiefly over nectar and flowers. And like I'm just imagining like Butterfree, if we have a look at the stats bit, is 3'7" and 70 pounds. As we established earlier, Sam could fuck up a Butterfree.
Yeah.
But like a Cutiefly is, I believe, like one of the smallest bug types. So why is this like, like preteen sized Pokemon starting fights with a fucking 4-inch big £4 Pokemon over some flowers. Can't you fucking learn to share, Butterfree? You bellend.
Yes. What I want to keep an eye out for in the future now is, because we already know that there's beef between the Stadium Professor and Professor Oak, but I want to now see in future if Ultra Sun, well, if the Generation 7 Professor carries on being obnoxious.
I would, yeah. I think that's going to be a fun one to figure out. I'm quite enjoying the kind of like head canon we're working on of the various Pokemon professors
Yeah, they are
their
fuming.
ongoing rivalry.
Oh, well, I mean, that's something that you get with this podcast. Feel free to follow the podcast through all the various ways that you can follow a podcast, and get us on Patreon for more heated Pokemon Professor action.
I'm going to drop a link to the link tree in the chat for anyone who is not already following us on all of the places.
Yes. And when we get to 500 followers, we're going to do our next competition. So
follow us and everything, and tell all your friends to follow us too.
Yeah.
And we're going to spend all that time looking for some like fun, interesting like Pokemon goodies we can get together.
Yeah.
For people to win.
And now for a chat from our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
Fuck all the way off. I would never accept sponsorship from Raid Shadow Legends. I'm sorry, it's just not happening. Not happening. Don't even joke. You just gave them free advertising by reminding people they exist.
Oh, apologies.
Get on with the smog on.
I just felt like we'd done such a good job of promoting the podcast that might have like sounded vaguely plausible. That's what we're going into. Right,
wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Right, let's go. Let's go into smog on. Okie doke. So. It's in untiered, which I don't think bodes well for it.
Yeah, because like as I think that's fair, because as I was saying before, it does have good. It is a good Pokemon for figuring out how to strategize in the early stages of the game. It is not one I would necessarily expect to be on your final team, because like it's decent, but it's not great. Like its stats aren't amazing really. There's nothing that makes me think, yeah, this is great apart from its decent enough move pool. But yeah, I'm not surprised people aren't fighting with it.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like its stats aren't amazing. Like you can see there, like it's got some yellow and orange, but you know, your attack and defense, base defense ain't great, and neither's the HP. And I think that if you are going to be sticking with a Butterfree, like how much it attacks, how much it can take, and how much HP it's got are going to be all like really important to you.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, that's something that I would not have guessed, that it was bug flying type.
It is bug flying type. It's always been bug flying type.
Yeah, I see. In my head, I always just imagined it as just bug on its own. And I suppose that would be like another reason too. That it could get swapped out, you know, like what you said, you know, if you've got, you know, once you hit level 16 or 17, is it? If you've got a Pidgey, that's going to be going up into a Pidgeotto, and it's probably going to be, at that point, like, it's going to start losing ground in terms of that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's got Gigantamax Butterfree on here as well, which, yes, it does.
I assume it will do, because it had the Gigantamaxes for the others, didn't it?
Yeah. So here it is, and it's like its stats haven't gone up massively there really,
No.
Which tier is it in? It's got AG, which I don't think we've had yet. Anything goes. So that's for 6v6 matches, which I have not, because I didn't play. Am I right in thinking that that's on Sun and Moon that they do 6v6s?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that I missed that particular game. So yeah, so it would appear that it is used, but again, it's probably swapped out quite early on, which is why they've probably not bothered to mess around with its stats. So should we give it our Trubbish rating?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
What do you think?
I'm thinking again based on the ratings that I've given other Pokemon. I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna give this a 7, and the reason why is because so I gave a Caterpie a 5 and I gave a Metapod a 3, and I think it is better than Caterpie, so I think it deserves to be higher than a 5. But thinking back on the ratings that I gave the starters, some of the middles I think I gave a 7, and I think I can't give it higher than the middle evolutions for the starters, because I think that it's Butterfree is very good, and you can build a team around it like what we've said, but I think that once you start to hit the middle evolutions for your starters, that's when this Pokemon starts to kind of fall out of your team rotation.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not one that's going to last. But yeah, I agree. I would also give it a 7 because I feel like it does deserve to be in like the higher end of the spectrum because um it's a really good Pokemon to have in your early bit of the game. It's really good at teaching you how to, like, in helping you figure out how to play the game well so that you're prepared by the time that your full team finally comes together. And I think it's also got a lot of those. I think it is a really memorable Pokemon because it's got a good handful of like big emotional story beats in the show, and it sticks with you. And like, I still cry every time Ash says goodbye to Butterfree.
Ah, nice.